to have you with us. We are recording this session, which will be available for a short period for lucky people who do get the chance to catch it online. I know we've got some value makers who couldn't be with us today. I'm really, really excited because we've got a slightly different session today, which will concentrate mainly on mental health and wellbeing in the workplace, and hopefully give us all lots of things to think about and useful tools for that. After we've done that, we will have a little session, if we've got time, on updates from all things One NHS Finance, so you can spot what other events and activities you can get involved in. But as I say, the vast majority of our time today is going to concentrate on our speaker, and I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Harpreet Chana, who's with us from the mental wealth workplace. Oh, you know what? I need to read it properly. Harpreet, I'm going to not mess up anymore. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and just say to everyone, I hope you have a brilliant time and enjoy the session.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jane, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'm really excited to be here. So I will share my screen. So hopefully, you know, technology is always great until it doesn't work. So let's let's hope that we will get everything working the way it is supposed to. So if this works right, you should hopefully be able to see some slides. Let me know if they are there. Yeah, just give me a nod. Wonderful. I can see some faces. Wonderful. Okay, so as I said, thank you so much in the first instance for inviting me. I really appreciate the invite, and I'm excited. I'm going to tell you all a little bit about myself and why I do what I do, and the reason why I've been asked to speak today. But before I do, I'm going to ask you to play along. So if you have a phone with you, now I know usually in talks you are encouraged not to have your phone. I'm the opposite. I want you to have your phone out, and if you can scan this QR code. Or there is a link as well, and I will pop the link in the chat for you so that you have that. If you wanted to just open a tab on your browser, just give me a second. The chat's just taking a bit of a time to load. Or yeah, so you can grab it from the chat as well. So you'll be asked to complete a form. If you can complete that form, it will then take you to Menti, which is the site we'll be using for our live poll shortly. As a thank you for filling out your details and for playing along with me today, you will get a copy of your slides, and it's done if you have WhatsApp. It will be delivered directly to your WhatsApp. You'll get one from me. It will be the MWA WhatsApp, and you'll get the slides. And I also, as a thank you, have a little freebie PDF on 7 ways, my tried and tested 7 ways on how to switch off effectively after work. So you'll get that as well, and that's all delivered straight to your phone. So if you can just do that and then pop the phone down to one side, or just minimize the browser, and then I'll get back to the presentation. So there we go. Okay, I'll bring this up again when we're going to do the poll if you haven't had it already. Okie dokie, right. Without further ado then, let's get started, because I could literally talk for England. I talk very quickly, so I know I can talk for England on mental wellbeing, and I have about 55 minutes, so I'm going to keep an eye on the time. So first and foremost, just try and pick the view that works best for you. Ideally, if you can see me and you can see the slides, that's perfect. Most of you are on mute anyway. If you want to come off mute and you want to ask me a question, please feel free. I would rather you stop me and ask me a question then and there. Then at the end, I'm happy to take questions. Equally, please use the chat function. I like to hear from you. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long 55 minutes if it's just my voice. So I like my sessions to be interactive. I'm happy for you to put a comment in. I'm going to be asking you questions and asking you to put things in the chat. So please do. And as I said, have your phones near you, because we're going to need that for the live poll. I'm only going to ask one thing of you, is that for the next 50 minutes or so, is that please just give me your time and attention. I know it's really easy when you've got emails to send and you can hear them binging in the background. I'm going to actually ask you a favour. Turn your emails off. Just close your inbox down for the next 50 minutes. Turn your notifications off on Teams. If you've got things buzzing in, just turn it off. Give yourself the gift of 50 minutes to yourself to think about you. I am ex-NHS. I train a lot in the NHS. I know how difficult it is to just get some time for you. And a lot of you will probably have families at home and pets at home and all the other things. So, you know, just give yourself the gift of 50 minutes. You're getting the slides. If you want to make notes, please feel free. But I just want you to think about where you are right now and where your team is right now, and really kind of embrace what I'm going to talk about today, because it is well-being, but with a difference. So I'm really pleased to, as I said, to have your attention, hopefully for the next 50 minutes. Okay, So before I get started, who on earth am I? Why have I been asked to come and present to you today? So I am a qualified pharmacist by background. I have 20 years of experience, more than 20 now, which is aging me, across healthcare. I have worked in hospital, I've worked in community, I've worked in primary care, and then latterly I had 2 senior national roles. So I've worked in national policy and representation as well. During my time in one of those roles, I struggled with stress and burnout. And like many of us who work in healthcare, I didn't feel that I could tell anyone about it. And so I kept a lot of it to myself, and unfortunately got quite sick as a result. I'll tell you a bit more about my story later. But in 2018, I retrained. And I'm now a certified executive leadership and wellbeing coach. And I'm very, very fortunate that I coach senior leaders from big multinationals from all over the world. And it's really interesting, no matter how senior the person is, no matter whether they're male or female, burnout and balance are usually the 2 things that they come to me for, because it's the one thing that we struggle with, no matter how senior you are. So, you know, I am really fortunate, as I said, to have that experience, and I bring it back to the NHS because that's where it needs it the most, and healthcare needs it the most. That's my background, it's my passion, and so that's why I do what I do. I'm also passionate about championing women and diversity in leadership. Having hit a glass ceiling myself at the age of 30, I really do champion women to kind of really like go forward and step into leadership roles. So it's a real passion of mine. Okay, so that's a little bit about me and some of the things that I've done. We'll get straight into the meat of today. The first question I get asked for, and I know I'm in a room full of financial colleagues, so you'll have seen that word wealth and gone, bing, that's something to do with us. And so it's not a spelling mistake, I promise you. It is wealth, not health. Why? Because it's something that we can, all of us can and should be investing in to protect our mental health. Okay, and that's why I turned it around and has a play on words, that it's mental wealth. And so mental wealth, what that actually means is this.
What?
Oh, there's somebody that needs to be muted. If somebody can just mute that individual for me, that would be wonderful. Thanks, Jane. Okay, so mental wealth is actually, it's better leadership of yourself and others. And that leads to improved well-being overall, because I know that poor leadership leads to poor well-being. And poor well-being of ourselves and other people leads to poor leadership. So poor leadership of ourselves and other people leads to poor well-being, and poor well-being leads to poor leadership. And the 2 are inextricably linked. I've seen it myself. I practice it myself every day. And I also know that in order, can you just think about how many problems we have with well-being in healthcare at the minute and within the NHS at the minute. So if you just think about, in order to tackle that mental health crisis, if we actually worked on leadership, how much well-being that would actually improve. And I just want you to think about that, because I guarantee you, in fact, I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever been the victim of poor leadership in your career to date in healthcare? Just pop a yes in the chat, just so I have an idea. And you know what I mean by it? This is like micromanaging. This is, checking everything that you're doing. This is not giving you any autonomy. Maybe it's a bully or a toxic, bit of a toxic work environment. Look at this, right? And I didn't know you were going to say that. So this is what I'm saying. Unfortunately, we don't do leadership very well in the NHS. And, I can say this in a room full of finance colleagues, a bit like how we're pedants in pharmacy and we have to be accurate with everything we do, because if we're not, we can obviously cause potentially even death. It's the same with you guys. You have to make sure your figures are accurate. So you have to be pedantic about it. You have to pay attention to the detail, just like we do. And unfortunately, when you have people like that, we're process driven. We're not people driven. And so when you have a lot of process driven people in a workplace, that's what leads to poor leadership, because we're not taught how to be good leaders of people. And if you just think for a second, when you've had that bad leader, if they were a better leader of themselves and of others, what the difference that would make to the team in terms of their well-being. So when you think about that, you know that I'm right. If we actually just dealt with the leadership problem that we have, and if we were all a better leader of ourselves and our teams, the well-being crisis in healthcare would shrink. For sure. So that's why I do what I do. And so that's why it's important to understand the mental wealth aspect. If we can lead ourselves better, we will naturally have a ripple effect on the team around us, and it will cause a really great overall effect on well-being. And what I like to say as a pharmacist, the side effect is great well-being. So yeah, that's where mental health comes from. Okay, so the first thing I want us to think about is our own perceptions, and start thinking about what we think about our health. And so this is where we're going to do the live poll. So if you haven't done that already, please do scan that QR code. I've also popped the link in the chat to do that. And when you get to the Menti site, I'll pop it in the chat again for anyone who might have joined since. If you get to the Menti site, I'll pop the number in the chat as well, so you can just cut and paste that if you want to. So it's 34978357. So that's in the chat as well there for you. And I'll bring up the Menti now. Let me know if you can't see it. I'm hoping you can. And so the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what 3 words come to your mind when you hear the term physical health? If anyone has any problems getting onto the site or anything like that, just let me know. There we go. We've started to get some through. So this is a word cloud. So the bigger the word, the more people who said it. Vegetables. I love that. My son would be like, oh, vegetables. He's 10. I made him eat some chicken and mushroom last night. It was like a chicken and mushroom in a white wine, like, sort of cream sauce. And he whinged to high heaven. And I said to him, it's the same that you get in your chicken and mushroom pie. It's just without the pastry. No, it's not, mummy. I can see the mushrooms. Oh, for God's sake. Vegetables. Okay, wonderful. So keep your phones with you, because I'm going to move on to another slide. So we've got healthy, exercise, fitness, strong, fit, good weight, body, training, routine, well-being, healthy eating, feeling well. Brilliant. Right, keep that with you. And now I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'm going to change the term. Now, be honest, what's the first 3 words that come to your mind when you think of the term mental health? Okay, stress, anxiety, depression seems to be the biggest. Just give it another few seconds. Okay, so we've got anxiety, stress, depression are the big 3, which is always the case. Struggle, well-being. We've got some mindfulness. That's good. We've got some positive rest. Yeah, happy. Wow. Boundaries broken, resilience, illness, alone, out of control. Right. What's the difference between this one? Look at the words there and look at the words here. What's the difference? Does anyone want to either come off mute or just pop it in the chat? What's the biggest difference between those words? Jane, more negative. Absolutely. Negativity, right? Isn't it interesting? The minute we think about physical health, it's positive, vitality, exercise, fitness, strength, wellness. But the minute we use the term mental health, it's negative, it's bad. And, it is the struggle, it's the stress and the anxiety and the depression. Those 3 are always the biggest. Why is that? Why is it when we think of physical health, we think of positive things, but when we think of mental health, we think of negative things? Because we all have mental health, don't we? In the same way that we all have physical health. Thank you for doing that poll, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. We'll go back to the slides now. There we go. We all have mental health. So that's the thing I wanted you to take away from that, is that every single one of us has mental health in the same way that we have physical health. So it shouldn't be a negative thing, yet it is. But for some reason, we seem to think that having problems with mental health is a negative thing. But how many of us have problems with our physical health? I guarantee there's 30 people in this call. There is not one single one of you, I think, right now, maybe a couple if you're young, but for the majority of us, we will have some sort of physical health problem right now, right here, right now. It's so rare for everybody to be 100% in top physical health. So, but it's accepted, isn't it, that we're not going to be in top 100% physical health. So why do we expect ourselves to be in top 100% mental health all the time, right? We can't, we won't. So at any point, any one of us is going to be struggling with our mental health. It just stands to reason, just in the same way that we do our physical health. Yet I guarantee you wouldn't have a problem not coming into work if you had a headache, if you had a backache, if you'd eaten something dodgy the night before and you've got a really bad stomach upset, you'd have no problem ringing up and saying, do you know what, I'm not going to be in work today, I really don't feel well, I've got a bad stomach, or I've got a migraine. How many of you pick up the phone and say, I can't come into work today because actually I'm really quite anxious, or I haven't slept well, or I'm feeling really depressed. I've got, my mum's ill and she's not well at the minute and it's really depressing me and it's really getting me down. Or actually I'm feeling really just at the point of emotional distress because I've got that much going on and I'm so overwhelmed and I don't know where to begin. How many of you ever ring in and say that? Okay, exactly. We just don't. And that's the problem. And so many of us work out physically as well, but many of us don't work out mentally. I bet you if I did it, in fact, let's do a quick poll. How many of you work out physically a week? Pop it in the chat with a number of times. If you do, just say, yeah, once a week, twice a week, whatever. Let's just see. 30 people in this room. How many of you work out once? Georgia. 3 times a week, Sophie. Brilliant. Keep going. Once. Better than nothing. Twice a week. 3-ish. 4. Twice a week. Most days for a walk. Love that, Jane. I get a lot of people doing open water swimming. Do you know what? It scared me at first because I don't like the cold, but I'm really quite liking the thought of doing something like that. So that's my target for next year. I'm going to try and get into something like that. Brilliant. Okay. Same people who do physical workouts. How many times do you work out your mental health in a week? 0. 0. Brilliant, Sophie. Really, really pleased. I sometimes get people saying, how do you work out your mental health? That's the other thing I get as well. How do you work out your mental health? Mindfulness is one of the things that you can do, not the only thing that you can do. Taking 10 minutes in the morning to yourself before the day starts, just to check in with yourself before the madness of the day starts, can be a bit of a mental workout. Walking is great for both physical and mental workouts. Practicing gratitude, daily, that's a mental workout. Journaling, and not journaling like Bridget Jones' diary, I did this today, or I weigh this much today, but journaling is a tool for you to use when you need it. It's a way of just getting everything out of your head, particularly if you've had an emotional response to something, to get it all out of your head and then look at it and go, actually, why am I thinking like that? That's really, that's not right. And I can see it for what it is. So journaling is a tool, and it just so happens I've got my journal. Look, just to proof in the pudding, it's a Gryffindor journal. I love it. It's got gold leaf. I love having a nice book to write in. So yeah, for me, exercise is mental health workout as well as cooking. I couldn't agree with you more, Bernadette. I love to cook. My husband thinks I'm crazy. He hates it. But there's nothing better. I will turn on usually Absolute 90s because that's the music I grew up to. So I'll put something on that I know I'm going to sing along to. And I'm more than happy to make a lovely meal for my family that my son then won't eat. But it's my way of just decompressing the day, and I quite like that because it just helps me to make that transition from work time, workspace, to home time, home space. So yeah, that's great. Okay, so the point is, I just want you to start thinking about, we prioritize our physical health, but we're not very good at prioritizing our mental health, and then we wonder why we've come under the effects of stress and burnout. This is why, is because we're not prioritizing actually putting ourselves in a good mental space as well. So why the focus on mental health? So yeah, firstly, somebody I think put in there around terminology. We hear a lot of the time mental health is used to describe ill mental health. What they mean is they have a mental health issue. What they're saying is, I've got mental health. You'll hear it on the radio or on TV when they're interviewing people. People will actually say, I've got mental health. What they mean is, because that's a bit daft, we've all got mental health. What they mean is, I have an issue. I have a mental health issue, but they don't say that. And so this is why there's that disparity between mental and physical health, is because it's what we see in the media. And dare I say, it's what we're brought up with. For those of us, we grew up watching soaps and we grew up watching films where mental illness is portrayed as something that is negative and something meaning that there's something really wrong with you, when actually, as I've just said, not everyone's in 100% mental health all the time. So this was a really interesting stat. Nearly 9 out of 10 people with mental health problems say that stigma and discrimination has had a negative effect on their lives. That's why they don't say anything. And because of the way that media portrays it, and because of the way that we say things as well. We have to think about our own terminology. Oh God, it's just absolutely crazy around here. It's all gone a bit mental. We say those things because that's what we've always been around. It's always, we've been surrounded by that terminology. So just starting to think about, actually, how am I perceiving mental health? How am I perceiving my own mental health? And am I thinking of it as a negative thing, or am I thinking of it as something that I need to invest in order to keep myself well? Okay. And as we start to move on to that and start to think about ill mental health, I wanted to talk about the mental health continuum, because, as I said, it's impossible for us to be 100% in mental health, good mental health all the time. Don't even know what that looks like, to be honest. I work a lot on my own mental well-being. I'm not 100% mentally well right now. It's just impossible. Has anyone ever heard of the term the mental health continuum ever? No. If you have, pop a yes, but most people haven't. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mike. So yeah, a lot of us haven't. And if you think about this, this makes sense, because we're not always 100% mental health, and it's the same with physical health as well. There'll be a physical health continuum. But here, so mental health is actually on a line. It's a scale. It's a spectrum, effectively, of mental health, and it goes from being severely distressed to right the way to being happy and excited. Right. So it goes from one to the other. But mental health, it's not a binary state. Okay, you're not either mentally healthy or ill. It's not binary, but that's what the media portrays. So the big difference, as I said, between mental health and ill mental health, that big difference is that actually there's this whole continuum. And our mental health will fall somewhere. You will be somewhere on this line. Everybody is somewhere on this line, right? And where you are every day changes, and during the day it changes. It's not fixed. And if let's say, and I know I'm in a room full of finance colleagues, so please do not, check my maths, but let's just say, if we say normal, if we look at a normal distribution curve, so we'll put normal in the middle, right? Average, if we want to take it as an average. So if we say that's in the middle, firstly, straight away, it's saying that most people have a minor mental health problem, doesn't it? Because if the normal is in the middle, okay, most people will then have it stands to reason that most people will have some sort of a mental health issue, because they're not happy and excited all the time. So everybody at some point, this is why I'm saying everybody has a minor mental health issue. And secondly, there is also, when we look at this continuum, there is a whole bunch of people that are struggling out there that we might not realise, and they are the ones that are left of this line. So the ones to the right of this line, between normal and happy and excited, probably the majority of us, right, we're all going to have some sort of issue with mental health. But there's a whole load of people that are on the left of that line, and that is undiagnosed distressed. These are the people, they're not performing well, they have decreased productivity, and they have decreased morale, right? And so that's what I wanted you to take away from this, is that it is a spectrum. And the problem is, managers tend to focus on the severe end. So, i.e., and workplaces in general, if there hasn't been a critical incident, they think there's no problem. They're waiting for people to really show up in severe distress before they then act upon it. And yes, we've got better at this since COVID. We've got better as workplaces to think, actually, we need to do a bit more work here on prevention, because we don't want people to get to severe distress, because that's when they take time off work and they're gone for months. So what we want to try and do is where the normal bit is, either side of that. If we can start to help those people, we can prevent them from getting into severe distress. And that includes you, by the way, not just the people that you work with. So only you know where you are on this line. I'm not going to ask you to declare where you are, but I want you to really check in with yourself and say, actually, where am I? Am I more towards the left than I am towards the right? And if I am more towards the left, what can I do to help myself? And I'm going to give you some tips today to go away with. Okay, so another way of looking at this, which I quite like as well, and you're going to get this, but if you want to take a picture, feel free. So this is Excellence from Mental Health Matters. And so basically it tells you and it shows you what it feels like to be at different points of this continuum. So, you know, when you're excelling, you're cheerful, joyful, solution focused, energetic, performing well at work, prioritizing sleep and recovery, which is really interesting because you'd think that people who work hard probably don't sleep very well because they're working so hard. Actually, the opposite is true. These people are sleeping well and they are rested and they're in flow, you know, that whole feeling of being in flow all the time. So when you look at what excelling feels like, and you're looking at sort of what in crisis feels like, there's a huge disparity. Most people are actually in this kind of unsettled bit. So when you're in struggling or in crisis, most people will then go and seek professional support. But for the majority of us, we are in this unsettled bit. And I'm not going to ask you where you are, but I would love for you to just look at this and say, where am I on this scale? And actually, are you where you thought you might have been when I first mentioned it on the first slide? I will tell you, most people are in between this unsettled and struggling, for sure. You know, and that it's difficult, right? It is absolutely difficult. So when you're in this part, in the red and the orange, it's professional support. When you're in this kind of unsettled bit, self-care and social support is the order of the day. So some of the things I'm going to talk about today will absolutely help you. But I just wanted to give this to you so you've got an understanding that actually my mental health is on a spectrum. I'm not going to always be happy and excited. Equally, I'm not always going to be in distress. I am going to move about on this. I also would love for you to focus on, where do I want to be? If I want to be in thriving, if I want to be more in the thriving, excellent bit, how do I need to be feeling? What do I need to do? What can I do for myself in order to be more calm or sleeping well or focused or whatever those things might be? Okay. So one of the things I was asked to do was to help you, not only, as I said, with yourself, but also to be able to spot signs of employee distress. So for those of you who lead teams, if I've got any team leaders, will you pop in a chat? If you just say yes, so I know just roughly how many line managers I've got in the room. This isn't just for line managers, by the way. A lot of the time, it is actually you spotting it in your colleagues. Sometimes line managers are a bit far removed and they might not see it themselves. So actually, they're relying on you as a team member to see it in themselves, to see it in your team, and to report it to them if you're feeling a bit worried. Yeah, there's quite a few if you're here. Great. Okay, so for you team leaders, try and think of it in your sort of in your line manager, sorry, think of it as your line reports. For everybody else, can you start thinking about the team, the wider team that you work in? And some of the things that you can look out for, number one, first and foremost, is behavior. Changes in normal behavior. Right. So this might be that you find suddenly that people are getting really frustrated easily, where they wouldn't normally before. And you can tell when people are at that point because when they're getting frustrated and they're getting really like angry, they might even shout at themselves or people around them, or the opposite. So behavior can be they're getting frustrated easily, or it could be they're getting disengaged. And actually, they used to be quite an engaged individual, but you know, now it's almost like nothing seems to, they're not bothered. They're just not bothered. And you can see that in their behavior. So that's the first thing to look out for. Secondly, it's the standard of work. Where their standard of work has slipped, where they're missing deadlines or they're asking for extensions, or maybe they're dropping the ball. That's a key sign that something else is going on. You know, and if you're working remotely, so I know not everybody is in the office 5 days a week anymore. So if you're working remotely, it's that the detachment from work is often accompanied by a decrease in productivity or a decrease in quality. So this can be harder to spot if you've got new people in the team, but for anyone who's established, and particularly for you line managers, you'll know the work habits of your team members. So you'll see if there's a sudden change in the attitude towards work or a decrease in the output or the quality of the work. That is usually an early sign that the employee is struggling, and we shouldn't feel that we can't ask that question. The key thing is not to be judgmental. Why has your work slipped is why is a very judgmental word, by the way. If you're ever going to use that in any question, it's a judgmental word. So, you know, you can ask the question also, you know what, I've noticed that, you know, that you've missed a few deadlines recently. What's going on? How can I best help support you? Right? Different way of asking the same question, but it's less judgmental. Okay, next, emotional state. So are they quick to tears? Are they snapping where they wouldn't normally snap? Are they quick to anger where they wouldn't normally be quick to anger? Are they quieter than they usually would be? and a bit more withdrawn. You know, and when I'm talking about crying, doesn't necessarily mean the women, men as well do cry, particularly when they're being pushed their limits. You know, I've been on a stage with somebody who was talking about his mental health and he was in tears. So, you know, don't think it's just the women, it's not, it's the men as well. Confidence. Do they have little faith in themselves? Are they blaming themselves for everything? Are they really down on themselves? Oh, it's always my fault. I can't do this right. Oh, you know what? I'm just no good. That kind of language. They can't seem to see the positive in anything. Fatigue. Are they falling asleep in meetings? Are they always looking tired? Are they complaining that they haven't slept well or that they're struggling a bit with sleep? Because a lot of us do this, but you might not pick up on the signs that if someone's saying that they're struggling with sleep, you know, and ask them why, what, you know, what's going on? How come, again, not the why, how come you're struggling with sleep, right? Physical changes, a bit harder remotely, but, you know, do they look disheveled? Are they not managing their physical appearance? Have they put on weight? Big key one, if they're putting on a lot of weight, does their skin look pale? And you can usually tell when someone's not sleeping or someone's not feeling well because you can see it in their actual physical appearance. Another one, increased smoking or drinking. Have you noticed people taking more breaks to smoke if they're smoking more? Usually a sign of stress. Or are they mentioning alcohol more? And, you know, if you're working in an office, are you getting a whiff of alcohol from them first thing in the morning and you know they've been drinking the night before? I know it can be difficult. It's why I do a course called Managing Mental Health Conversations in the Workplace. So it can be difficult sometimes to raise these issues, but I'm not going to go into that here in terms of how you can raise it, but I just want you to start thinking about, actually, you know, are they going out a bit more? Are they smelling a bit of alcohol a bit more? Are they talking about the fact that they're drinking more? Key thing is not to judge. Everyone has their coping mechanism. Some people eat, some people eat a lot of sugar, some people smoke, some people drink, some people retreat. Everyone has their own way of coping with stress. The key thing here is just to start spotting it if you think that there's a problem and to be empathetic because they're obviously experiencing some sort of distress. And so, you know, it's always important to think about if they are smoking more, drinking more, eating more, whatever it is, what's the intention behind that? Like, where's that coming from? Okay. And then finally, absence or lateness. Have they been taking more sickness absence? Are they turning up late to work or they're turning up late to meetings continuously? And what reasons are they giving for their absence? As I explained at the beginning, a lot of people will not tell you it's mental health related. They'll use a physical health excuse. So if somebody is suddenly starting to ring in sick a bit more and they're always saying it's physical, actually ask the question, is there something else going on? And, you know, and reassure them that they can share with you. Okay, so they're your signs of employee distress. And so when you put all these together, you can see how somebody in your team might display their distress. As I said, in a virtual world, it is a little bit harder. The physical changes, the smoking and drinking, and the absence. Those two are difficult. But I'm going to just show you on the next slide. Those three things in the blue, they're the three things that you can account for when you're in a remote capacity. Have they suddenly started to turn their camera off when they used to have it before? You know, some people are introverted, they don't like putting their camera on, but if there's suddenly an aversion to putting the camera on, there might be some underlying issues. You know, or if they're unresponsive to team communications, that might be the time to talk to them. Are they quieter than usual? Are they opting out of optional meetings that they don't need to come to all the time, and they're not really checking in with you? And this one is a really important one, endlessly asking the same question, like repeating themselves. When people are at high stress, when they've got high stress in their lives, they tend not to process logic or facts quickly. You might know this in yourself as well. You know, when you're really pushed, overwhelmed, can't think, trying to do about a gazillion things at once, and then you're like, I can't remember what that person said, or, you know, what was that thing again? And you're constantly asking. Now, you know, I'm at that age where I've got a little toddler, you know, and I'm also hitting, you know, that kind of middle-age women menopause. So my brain doesn't work at the most of times. I'm quite open about that. But so you've got to tread carefully. But if people are asking repeating questions, just ask, you know, is everything okay? Because it can be a sign that something else is going on as well. Okay, so that's a sign in terms of other people. But what about you? Where are you on that continuum? And how can you spot signs in yourself that something isn't okay? And the key thing I want you to take away from here, there is a big difference between stress and burnout. And a lot of people think it's the same thing, and it's not. So that's why I wanted to cover what the two things are. They are different. And again, I'm not going to ask you to tell me which one you are, but I just want you to start and just check in with yourself as I'm talking. Really listen and go, actually, where am I? Where am I on this? Is it stress or is it burnout? And I know that a lot of us will be feeling it. I usually do a poll as well to see how we're feeling right now. And without fail, every time I do it, it's not well, not well, not well, not well. You know, as in, you know, feeling stressed, overwhelmed, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So I know that a lot of you will be feeling at that extent. So that's why I wanted you to be able to determine the difference between the two. So stress, first and foremost, it's a normal human reaction, right, to anything that's new or anything that's a perceived threat. It's normal for our bodies to go into fight or flight stress reaction phase. That's just what our body does. It's designed to do that. And we need that stress in order to be able to fight whatever the issue is, or to run away. We need that adrenaline pumping through, the stress hormones pumping through. We need that in our bodies. Okay, so it's not a bad thing. And it can be positive because we do need a little bit of that. But stress is very activating. It's active. Burnout is very, very different. Burnout, it's a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion that's caused by excessive and prolonged stress. So what happens is our bodies are not designed to be in that stress reaction phase for very long. We're supposed to kind of slip into it, deal with the threat, slip out of it. But what's happening is, because we're under so much stress all the time, our bodies are in that stress kind of reaction phase, and for such a prolonged period of time that it becomes burnout. So that's the difference kind of between stress and burnout. And burnout is much, much longer term, and it is that completely feeling empty. I'm going to show you what burnout looks like shortly, but it feels like, because I've been there, I can tell you, it feels like a total disconnect between what you're doing and what you want to be doing. It's like when you're forcing yourself to do something that's completely out of line with who you are. So when you're working for a toxic boss or in a bad bullying environment, and you're forcing yourself to go into work when you know you don't want to, and you're waking up every day thinking, I can't do this, and you're still doing it anyway, that is usually a sign of burnout. Okay, and so just help you to understand sort of where you might be on this, I'm going to show you the difference between what stress feels like and what burnout feels like. Okay, so stress is on the left and burnout is on the right. So stress is over engagement. Remember, stress is activating. Stress is over engagement, whereas burnout is disengagement. Stress is overactive emotions. You're running around, you're doing a lot of stuff, you're constantly active. It's overactive emotions. Whereas burnout, it's blunted emotions. In stress, you have a sense of urgency. You're always doing things, trying to get a lot done. In burnout, it's a sense of helplessness. What's the point? I might as well not even bother. Stress is lack of energy. Burnout is completely devoid of energy. It literally is, as the picture shows, I am struggling to even get up and get out or get on today. Stress leads to anxiety. We know that. I'm a pharmacist. I'll tell you, in the top 50 drugs that are dispensed, how many either anxiety medications we're giving, or we're giving stuff for things like high blood pressure or gastric ulcers. It's all caused by anxiety because so many of us are feeling anxious. So stress causes anxiety. Whereas burnout leads to depression. That's the difference. And you can see that because of the devoid of energy, sense of helplessness. Stress causes physical damage. As I said, it causes damage to our hearts, it causes damage to our stomachs, whereas burnout leads to emotional damage. Stress is a high cause of premature deaths because of the physical problems that we encounter from being in that phase for too long, whereas burnout, it's a high cause of suicide because of the depression. Okay, so again, it's another spectrum, and you're never going to, you know, I don't know where you are on this. You might be on the left, you might be on the right, you might be somewhere in the middle. But if you are more towards the middle or the right, I just want you to think about that right now. And, you know, you could leave it, you could stay exactly where you are, but I believe you're here listening to me for a reason. And I would love for you today to just think about, actually, I might need to make a change here, and something's going to have to give before I give. And that's why I'm here talking to you, because this has become much more of an issue since the pandemic. I know burnout is a real buzzword. Everyone's talking about it, but you might not necessarily be at burnout yet. You might just be at stress, and you can do something about that. We can help you with that. What I want to do is prevent you from getting to burnout, because when you get there, it's really difficult to come back. And I wanted to share with you, if you don't mind, the impact of doing nothing, because I know this from firsthand experience. Okay, and I wanted to share my story as to why I do what I do. And I just want to warn you before I start, this may trigger you. If it does, I will be sharing my details at the end. Please, please do get in touch with me. And I will also tell you every time without fail, when I share this story, I will get at least one person reach out to me and say that this could be their story. So please don't feel that you know, you can't reach out to me. You absolutely can. Okay, so I want to take you back 8 years. And 8 years ago, I had everything From the outside, I had everything. I was working in a senior national role in central London, and I lived in London. I had a house, which is practically impossible these days, but you know, I did. I had a house in London. I had a lovely car on the driveway, like a lot of people do. I had a wonderful husband. I had a beautiful little boy. He was 2 at the time. And you know, life was good. I was the life and soul of the party, really busy social life, always out and about. And you know, we took holidays abroad. And as I said, on the outside, it was an Instagram perfect life. On the inside, it was a completely different story. But nobody saw it because I didn't share it with anyone. They didn't see the fact that I was waking up and crying every morning because I couldn't face the day, the thought of going into another day at work. They couldn't see the amount of angst and anxiety and stress I was feeling day to day. And so that stress I'd had for a number of years, and I didn't share it with anyone. And that stress led to burnout. And I suffered with burnout for some time, and I didn't share it with anyone. And that burnout became depression, but I didn't know it at the time because I looked around and I could see all my colleagues were just as stressed as me. They were working just as long hours as I was. So I thought to myself, who the hell am I to complain? Right? Nobody rings in sick. I can't be the one to complain and say I've got a problem. So I just carried on. I put my mask of capability on my face and I showed everybody how capable I was. But inside it was, you know, as I said, you know, I was a bit of a mess, to be honest. And then things came to a head when one day I'd gone to the GP surgery and I'd gone to get a blood test form. And it wasn't my usual GP. So she hands me the form and I don't know why, but tears started to fall. And I don't know where they were coming from. And I don't know whether she didn't notice that I was crying or whether it was because she had a waiting room full of people and thought, oh God, I can't, you know, probably get into this with her now. But she gave me the form and she sent me on my way. And I'm starting to walk home. And by now the tears are coming thick and fast. I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know why I'm crying. And I carry on walking and I come to a railway bridge near my house, which is a known suicide spot. And I stood there on that railway bridge and I walked over to the end and I looked down and I could see the fast trains going in and out of London. And in that moment, I just stopped and I closed my eyes and I thought to myself, I could just do this. It'd be the easiest thing to do. I could just jump and then that would be it. And I wouldn't have to feel like this anymore. And I wouldn't have to think these things anymore. And I wouldn't have to feel this pain. I was in pain. It's like I wouldn't be in pain and I wouldn't be in suffering and I would be free. It would be a release. Because you know what? I just feel like I'm failing at everything. I'm failing at my job. I'm no good. I'm failing as a wife. I'm failing as a mother. I just can't do it. Everybody else seems to be so much in control. And I'm worthless. I can't do this. And you know what? Actually, if I did, my husband, he'd marry someone else. He'd marry someone way better than me, someone skinnier, prettier, who's got it together, not like me. And my son, oh, well, he'd have a different mum. He'd have somebody who's way better as a mother than me because I just can't, I'm just failing. It was the thought of my 2-year-old boy growing up without his mother that made me realize in that moment, oh my God, what the hell am I doing? I snapped my eyes open. I walked away from the edge of the bridge. I walked to the other side. I picked up the phone. I gave my spouse the kind of call that no spouse should ever get from their other half. I told him what I was thinking and he was hysterical. I was hysterical. And he stayed on the phone and obviously got me home. But the thing I said to him, I just went, you know what? I don't think I'm okay. And I think I need help. And that was the first time I actually openly admitted to myself, first and foremost, I think I've got a problem and I don't think I'm well. And I really do think I need help. And I had been to the GP before and I had told them that I was struggling, but you know how it is, long waiting list and everything else. And she wanted to give me medication. Of course, I know all about the medication. I thought, I don't want to take the medication. I'm fine. So I'd started seeing a counsellor, but it still didn't stop me from ending up where I ended up. And the reason I share my story with you is because I need you to understand that if it can happen to me, somebody who can literally stand up in front of a crowd of 1,000 people and give a talk like that without even thinking twice about it, somebody who was the life and soul of the party, right? Somebody who's bubbly and sociable and confident, all of that stuff, and had everything that I had. If it can happen to me, it can happen to you. It can happen to anyone you know. And it wasn't a big bang. I didn't I didn't lose someone in my life. I wasn't going through a divorce. I didn't lose my job. There wasn't a trigger that led me to that moment on the bridge. It was just stress, way too much stress in work and at home that led me to that point where I felt I didn't want to be here anymore. And so it can creep up on you. And when we're not looking after ourselves and we are prioritizing everybody else over and above ourselves, this is what happens, and it's what can happen. So I share it with you because I need you to just stop and think about, you know what, I don't want to end up there. And my personal belief is that nobody should ever end up in a place where they feel like they don't want to be here anymore because of work. It's just not important enough. It really isn't. Life is so short, but we don't see it at the time because it really can get on top of us. And so that's what drives me to do what I do. I don't want anyone to have a bridge moment like me, and I don't want anyone to feel that they don't want to be here because of work. Thank you for letting me to share my story. And as I said, if it triggered you, please do get in touch with me. But one thing I will show you before I move off this is the difference between me 8 years ago and now. I will tell you that picture on the left was taken a week after that moment on the bridge. This is my birthday in April 2016. I was out with my friends and family. Can you tell what is going through my head? I'm smiling. But if you notice, the smile doesn't reach my eyes. When I look at this picture, I see pain. I know how much pain I was in this picture. I know I was. And I didn't share it with anybody because I felt like I couldn't. I thought people would think I was weak. So I didn't say anything. Look at the difference now. I've put 2021 there. I don't know what, that should have been a 4. That's me hitting 1 instead of 4. Apologies. That's my fat fingers with a typo. 2024 it should be. And it's 1 and 4 are next to each other, aren't they, on the keypad? But yeah, this is me now. Okay, and if you notice the difference, look at the difference. I absolutely radiate happiness. It comes from within because I've worked on myself so much. I've worked on my own mental wealth to so that I'm not at the extent to where I was before of the stress and everything that I was feeling. So listen, if I can do it, you can. And the key thing I want you to take away from this bit is please don't suffer in silence like I did. It really, really is okay not to be okay. And as I have pointed out many times in this presentation so far, none of us are 100% okay anyway. Okay, and you never know, when you open up, you might find that other people are also struggling. So please don't suffer in silence. And the other key thing I want you to take away from today is prevention's better than cure. I work in medicine. I'm telling you, prevention's better than cure. So the way to tackle stress and burnout, whether it's you or your team, is to work on the prevention. So it's easier to work on yourself and your mental wealth now rather than trying to recover. Okay, thank you, Jodie. I appreciate that. Absolutely. That's exactly why I share it. It's important that we talk about this. So yeah, it's much easier to work on yourself and your mental wealth now rather than waiting for you to have to recover, because when you do that, the personal cost is huge when you have to take months off work. And the very team that you're trying to protect, they end up having to take on your work for months and months. Whereas actually, if you'd just taken a week or 2 off now, that probably and got yourself in a better state, that probably would have been a better thing to do, right? So, okay, I'm going to try and talk to you about how we can do prevention. So the key thing is, I love this picture. It's one of my favorites. What we want to do is avoid this. And I love this picture because it is a bit tongue-in-cheek. There's a lot of work that goes into, there's a lot of work you've probably already seen on stress management and awareness. And now I've told you that stress can lead not only to burnout, but it also leads to anxiety and depression as well. So, and they're the big 3 that you saw in your own poll. But there's also a whole spectrum of other issues that stress can affect that we don't even think about. Insomnia, grief, seasonal affective disorder. How many people in this last week with the weather change have been feeling really blue and they don't know why? Be honest, put a yes. I'll tell you, I have a group coaching program. There's 35 women on that. They were talking about that this week. A lot of them are struggling because it suddenly got really cold and dark and wet and windy, and it's just really flipping miserable. Thank you, Sarah, for being honest. It's hard to keep motivated when it's like that outside, right? So yeah, and then you've got other clinical conditions. People have bipolar, people have schizophrenia, psychosis, you might not even know, and they are working with them. So, this can all be affected by workplace stress. One of the ways that we can start to tackle the culture around stress is this. So before I go into kind of my 3 top tips for your well-being, I really want you to think about this. Please, please, please do not wear your overwork as a badge. Don't wear this as some sort of badge of honor. And you know what I mean. How many people brag about the number of hours that they've worked, the weekends that they've worked, the lack of sleep that they've had, the holiday that they've got left over, or the fact that they eat lunch at their desk every single day. It's not something to be proud of. It really isn't. Some of the most successful people in the world, they work actually in the least amount of time. It really is the 80-20 principle. It's prioritizing the things that are going to have the most impact and letting the nice to haves go. I know we're all detail focused people, but sometimes you've got to let the little things that you know are a nice to have, you don't need to have, just let them go. Remember, 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. They're the ones you need to prioritize. Those little things can make a really big impact, and there honestly is. And if there's nothing else you've taken away from my story today, there is so much more to life than killing yourself at work. It's just not worth it. Like really pushing yourself to work really, really hard. And I'll tell you something else. If I had acted that day, I never would have had my daughter. She's nearly 2, and she's the light of my life. She really is. And I genuinely think it was divine intervention that day. Because she's one to watch out for. She's not even 2, and I tell you now, she's going to run this world. She's definitely got something about her. Okay, so it's about looking after yourself, being a good example to others. That actually helps you to perform better. So the first step is to recognize unhelpful behaviors and refuse to give in to this kind of overworking, not taking holiday, not working all the time. So if you're in a team where this happens, I would love for you to call it out and say, why are we praising this? Why are we acting like this is something to be proud of? Because it's not. Actually, why don't we change the focus and talk about how we're looking after our well-being instead? So instead of bragging about how much work we've done, why don't we talk about what we're doing for our well-being? How many of us do a mental workout? What do we do for our mental health? And actually share that instead. So much more empowering than, oh, I worked all weekend. Okay, great. Okay, so my 3 top tips for better well-being. And so these are my 3 tips that I share to help you beat the potential burnout. Number 1, first and foremost, it's practicing self-compassion. This is about being kinder to yourself. When you work in a job where you have to be accurate, like many of you do, it means the standards that you have of yourself are up here, but the standards that you have of everyone else around you are also up here, which can lead to a problem. Because if you don't meet your own standards, you can really beat yourself up. Why can't I do this? What's wrong with me? Everyone else can do it. It's almost like you have to be perfect at everything. And so that can be a real problem because you're beating yourself up. And it's really hard to feel motivated, energized, empowered when you're beating yourself up all the time. Equally, I'm also going to put this out there, and it's going to put the cat amongst the pigeons. If other people don't meet the standards of work that you've set for them, you end up taking their work on for yourself. And you know what I mean? Oh, I'll just do it myself. It's going to be easier, it's going to be quicker, and I'm going to do it accurately. I haven't got the time or the patience to be teaching someone else. I'll just do it myself. How many of you, please be honest, have ever done that? Whether it's at home or at work, when you think, you know what, I'm just going to do it myself because I'll do it quicker, and it'll be, especially with kids. Me and my husband are arguing at this at the minute because my 10-year-old really needs to learn how to do more chores, but he does them badly. And my husband's like, you know what, he's just never going to learn. Like, he's just do it ourselves. He makes more mess than actually, clearing up. And I laugh because I'm like, yeah, but he knows that if he doesn't do it well, you're going to jump in and do it for him. That's why he does it. And I laugh to myself because I'm like, you do exactly the same. You do things badly so that I jump in and do it. So yeah, it's a bit of a cycle, right? So yeah, look at this. Yes, guilty. Yes. Very relatable. Okay, so the first thing is we've got to recognize we've got these high standards of ourselves, guys. That's the first thing you've got to recognize, is that how hard are you being on yourself? And how hard are you being on others? So the first thing I want you to do, the majority of us work in the jobs that we do because we care. Right, particularly within the NHS, it doesn't pay that well. We know it doesn't pay. That's not what you stay in the NHS for. We do it because it's for the greater good. We do it because we know that at some point we're all going to need the NHS, whether it's through our parents or us or our children. And so it's in our interests to keep it going. And so we are very compassionate people. That's why we do what we do. So I'm asking you, all that compassion that you have for everybody else, I want you to do this with it. All that compassion out there, I want you to just do this and give it to yourself. Okay. Be kinder to yourself and ask yourself, what am I expecting of myself? Would I expect the same of somebody else? Would I expect the same of my kids or my team or, my colleagues, my peers, whoever it is? Because if you wouldn't, and if you are saying the kinds of things to yourself that you would never utter to another human being, please stop doing it. And if I asked you to list some of the secret things that you say to yourself, oh God, I look fat. Oh God, I look old. Oh, I'm really stupid. Or why have I made that mistake? I'm an idiot. Or I've got a mental health problem. I'm weak, which is what I thought, right? If I said to you, would you ever say that to another human being in order to motivate and inspire them? No, I can see you shaking your head. You wouldn't do, but why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you go up to someone and say, well, you're fat and old, you're ugly, no one's ever going to love you, or you're rubbish at your job, you're going to lose your job because you're crap and everyone's going to realize that you just wouldn't do it. Why wouldn't you do it? Because you know what it would do to that person. It would absolutely damage them psychologically. So then why do we do it to ourselves? Because we do. And we have to lead ourselves. If nothing else, I've told you all your leaders today, because you have to lead yourself. You have to get yourself up and out of bed every morning and go to work. So if you wouldn't lead anyone else with that type of language, how on earth are you going to lead yourself? You're just going to feel really, really devoid of energy and feel that kind of burnout energy because you're just not going to want to do things. It's really disempowering. So extend the same compassion you freely give to others. And for you control freaks out there, I know I'm one of them. Ask yourself, what will it take for you to accept good enough? Does it really have to be perfect? Can you accept good enough? And what's it going to take? Does it really matter if the dishwasher isn't stacked a certain way? I know it's really infuriating. You can get more dishes in the rack. I get it. But sometimes just let it go. It's not worth getting stressed about. And if they're not putting the washing away the way that you like it, sometimes as well, just let the little things go, because you're just putting yourself in a state of stress when you don't need to be. So that's my first tip. Secondly, communicating more. Okay, so when we're thinking about our teams and whether you lead a team or you're in a team, you can go back to your team with this. So it's thinking about how you communicate with your team and how you can do it more. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, how often do you check in? How often do you check in as a team? You let me know in the chat. Is it weekly, daily, never? Daily, Roxana, brilliant. Daily. Okay, so most people daily or weekly. What's the quality of that check-in? I suppose that's the thing that you want to ask, because there's one thing saying, how is everybody today? And then moving on swiftly and actually properly checking in. And I always say it should be at least weekly. A proper good check-in should be at least weekly. And I'll tell you, when I worked in a pharmacy, I used to do this daily, because I understood as a manager, people fed off my energy. And sometimes I would have come in on literally half an hour's sleep because I was really struggling with anxiety when I worked in my first place. And I'd come in, but I'd always be high energy on my check-ins because I knew that the team feeds off me as a leader. So there's a way to structure your check-ins and what I really want you to think about, okay? If you're doing them weekly, a really good weekly check-in starts off with a gain review. What's that? You ask me. So how many people start on a Monday by transcribing all the things that they didn't do last week onto their list for this week? And then berating themselves for how many things they didn't do. It's not a good place to start the week because you're starting on the back foot already. You've started from a place, remember, we've just talked about self-compassion. You're starting from a place where you're telling yourself off. You're not going to feel empowered to work hard this week. Try switching this up and doing a gain review. I do it myself every single week rather than focusing on the gap of where I am now or where I want to be and all the things I want to do. I look at the gain. What have I gained in the last week? Let's look back at everything I do. Do you know what I do? It literally takes 10 minutes. 10 minutes of my time on a Monday, and it sets me up for the week. I'll look at the tasks that I did complete, and I congratulate myself for that. I'll look at the meetings and the emails that I did in the last week. I'll look at it and I'm like, yeah, I did that, and I did that, and I did that, because there's so many things that you achieve that are not captured anywhere, and you're not stopping and congratulating yourself for doing that. So you can do a gain review, and at the start of the week, you can say to your team, do a gain review and come and let us know what are a couple of things that you're really proud of yourself for achieving in that week. You start the week off like that. And everybody is on a high straight away because you're saying to them, what do you want to celebrate? What do you want to congratulate yourself on? And we will also congratulate you on your win from last week. It gets you in a completely different mindset and a great start to the week. So gain review is the first thing. And then on a Friday, you can look at and you can do this daily, by the way. If you want to do it daily, do it daily. It literally would take a few minutes if you're doing it daily, because you wouldn't have to look at everything, obviously, from the past week. But the end of the day or the end of the week to kind of check in is what went well and what didn't go well. And more importantly, what can we learn from it? So just ask everybody and say, listen, what give me one thing that went well this week, one thing that didn't go well, and one thing you're going to do differently as a result. And again, this doesn't need to take long. It can literally be, if you've got people like me that talk for hours, you can actually limit it and just say 30 seconds. 30 seconds. of what went well, what didn't go well, and then 30 seconds on what you want to do differently, that kind of thing. But start thinking about how you're structuring your check-ins. And if you're working in a team, go back and say, hey, listen, I did this great training session today, blowing my own horn, but I did this great training session today. And she was talking about structuring our check-ins. Can we do this? Can we be a bit more proactive and a bit more productive and feeling, coming from a place of feeling good? I do a lot about achieving peak performance, and these are two of my best tips to do that. Okay. And, you know, within the team as well, if you don't have one, nominate a wellbeing champion, you know, but then don't just leave them to do the job single-handedly. Does anyone have a wellbeing champion in their team? Pop a yes in the chat if you do. Let's just get a feel for how many do. I do get a lot of wellbeing champions in the NHS coming to me because they've never really been shown how to do the job. Yes, some people are saying that. And they're like, we've got this job, but we don't really know what we're supposed to be doing in it. We don't really know how to make the most of it. So the wellbeing champion should be feeding into those weekly check-ins. And I would encourage that wellbeing champion to speak to everyone in the team regularly and reach out regularly and just schedule a one-to-one. Just needs to be once a month, literally coffee catch up, 15 minutes, just checking in. How's everything doing with your wellbeing? And if you're a team manager and you've got a wellbeing champion, empower them to do that. Give them the time to do that. So important. 15 minutes is nothing per person, right? In a month, it's nothing. And what you can do as well on your weekly check-ins, brainstorm with the wellbeing person what you guys can do for that. It shouldn't just be the World Mental Health Days. It should be all the time. And maybe in your check-ins you can say, what did we do for our wellbeing today? Okay, maybe that's another thing that we can also focus on. Okay, finally, organize your boundaries. So for those of you who want the 7 ways to switch off effectively, some of that will be in there as well, but this is really important. That's the freebie that will come in your WhatsApp. This is really important. A lot of people, when they look at boundaries, they think it's pushing back and saying no to other people. It's not just that. Actually, it starts with you, first and foremost. So if you're somebody who ends up working most evenings or sitting in front of Netflix with your laptop open and not really working, but feel better for having your laptop open, I'm going to ask you to set a stop working time. Why? Because if you don't set a stop working time, what happens is you stretch the work to fill the time because there's no deadline. And if you keep saying in your head, I'll work later when the kids are asleep, or I'll just do this at home, or I'll do it when everyone else has left the office, you will actively procrastinate during the day by looking at this infernal thing, or, you know, answering emails, or answering team thing, or, you know, you'll go and get a cup of coffee, or you'll get distracted, or you'll have a chit chat, and it'll be a lot longer than you probably would have done if you knew I've got to get my work done. So if by having a deadline, you will work that little bit harder in order for you to meet that deadline. So set a stop working time. Let's say I'm going to stop by 6 today. It means then when someone wants to distract me with when I'm making a cup of tea, listen, I'm really sorry, I'd love to chat. I've just got something I need to get off my desk today. Can I chat to you later? And that's fine. No one's going to mind. No one's going to mind. So set a stop working time. Oh, hang on. Leave work at work. Try not to have your work open. And if you've got a stop working time, say to yourself, I'm not going to work after that. And there's 2 things you can do to do this, by the way. If you're working from home, you can slam the laptop down and say to yourself, and now work is done. Because it's making there's a distinct boundary between work time, workspace, home time, home space. And if you're working at home, either shut the door if you can on your work, or if you can't, if it's in a public space, can you cover it with something or put a screen around it? Out of sight, out of mind. If you're on site and you're coming in, when you shut the door, say to yourself, and now work is done. Your brain needs to hear it. You have to signal it to your brain, now work is done, and try not to read your emails after that time, because then you're telling your brain that work isn't done. And it will start ticking and start thinking. So, and now work is done. Stop saying yes. If you're a people pleaser and you keep saying yes to things, even if you don't want to do them, please try and just take a pause before the mouth. If you ever notice your mouth says yes before brain is engaged, and then you're like, why the hell have I just volunteered to do that? I don't want to do that at all. And it's the people pleasing tendency that we can have, again, because we're caring people. So stop saying yes. Take a pause, don't speak, and just check in and say, how much do I really want to do this thing? My personal tip, I check in with myself and say, out of 10, how much do I want to do this? Oh, it's about a 3. Well, then you shouldn't be doing it. Anything less than 7 out of 10, you shouldn't be doing it. So there's a little tip for you. Scheduling in downtime. This is really, really important. I start most of my mornings with 10 minutes before the rest of the house wakes up. Why? Because that's my 10 minutes for me to just be. We are human beings. We're not human doings. The minute my kids get up, the minute I get up, I'm do all day. So that 10 minutes in the morning is my being time, where I literally sit and I say to myself, I check in, how am I feeling today? I'm feeling a bit tired. Okay, need to be a bit kind to myself today. I'm feeling tired. Okay, who do I want to be today? How do I want to show up today? How do I want to show up for my kids? How do I want to show up for my clients? How do I want to show up at work? How many of us ever ask those questions of ourselves? We don't. 10 minutes in the morning is my best well-being tip, just scheduling in some downtime, and then taking your regular breaks and your leave. It's not big or clever to eat your sandwich at your desk every day. Please just take 10 minutes, even if it's just to go walk around the block or go out in the garden, get some vitamin D under the sun if it's ever out. But yeah, don't feel that you always have to, and I'll just get a bit more work in whilst I'm at my desk. Just try and take that break, that mental break. And then my final tip, make a non-negotiable date in your schedule for self-care regularly. Self-care is something that really fills your cup back up. We can't pour from an empty cup, and people will be taking out of your cup all day. So my 10 minutes in the morning is a way of starting my day with a full cup. And it's non-negotiable for me, even on the weekends. So I'm asking you, what can you do for yourself? And schedule it in so you know I'm going to do this for myself. And then finally, if you are struggling, please don't keep it to yourself. Work with a professional. Right? Whether you reach out to someone at work, your team, your boss, me, whoever it is, don't hide it to yourself. Work with somebody. It's the best thing I ever did. The thing that got me to turn my life around was an amazing mindset coach. I worked with her. She completely changed my life. And it's because of her that I retrained in 2018 to give that gift back to other people, the gift that she gave me. That's why I do what I do. So honestly, it's life-changing. So do work with a professional. I know I went a little bit over, but hopefully you'll forgive me. That's it from me today. That QR code is my LinkedIn. Please do keep in touch, or you can find me on Harpreet China. Please do keep in touch. I love to hear from you. And yeah, if there's anything I can help you with, I aim to be the person that I needed 8 years ago for anyone. So, just give me a shout and I'm happy to jump on a call. And thank you very much.
Oh, brilliant stuff. Harpreet, thank you so much. My goodness, loads of reactions coming out there. I mean, so much to think about. Are you okay for us to ask a few questions if people have got
Absolutely.
some? So
if you've got time, yeah, if there's time, that's not a problem.
We've got 5 minutes. So if anyone has got any questions, do stick your hand up or put something in the chat. But I'm going to kick off if that's okay. I mean, there was so much there that resonated for me. But one thing that I would find it really helpful if you could say a bit more about, because you talked about don't wear your overwork as a badge. And I thought, we're a lot better in a lot of our departments in the NHS, but there is still in some places a real culture of, oh, we're working too hard, and almost a bit of competitiveness about that.
Yeah.
And I really liked your kind of thought about, setting an example, etc. You also talked about calling it out. I think people might find that quite hard. Have you got any advice on how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I would ask it in a team meeting. I'd say, can I raise an agenda point? Can we just talk about our team well-being? I'd raise it with under the guise of team well-being. If you've got a well-being champion, get them in to help you on this. And then just say, I just really wanted to question, and blame me, by the way. Totally happy for you to do that. Just say, I went to this event recently, and she was talking about, why do we brag about overworking? Like, what is it? Why do we feel the need to do that? And actually, should we not be celebrating, prioritizing our well-being first rather than the amount of work that we're doing? And can we think about, as a team, what culture we're setting for our team when we're constantly talking about the amount of work we've done? Because surely it shouldn't be about the amount, it should be about the impact. And we can only be impactful at work if we're looking after ourselves better. So can we make it a weekly focus on, and this is a great way of doing it, can we make it a weekly focus of these check-ins? You as the boss, could you sort of say, listen, what's everyone going to do for their well-being this week? What have people got planned? Great way of just changing the narrative. So it might not change it straight away, but it just takes the focus away from, I'm doing all of this work, to actually, what am I doing for myself? And then if that does come out, just, people are still talking about it and saying, well, that's great, but tell me what you're going to do for your well-being this week. Great that you're doing all these hours and that you've not slept. Wonderful. Well, it's not really great, but you know what I mean. Okay, I understand, but what are you doing for your well-being? Because remember, that's really important as well. That's what I would do.
No, absolutely brilliant. And I remember many years ago having working for a chief exec who recognized that people, there was a bit of a long hours culture, and she got everybody to put their hours into a spreadsheet. I mean, it was a spreadsheet at the time. We didn't have fancy forms and stuff like that in those days, because, and it wasn't a kind of like, let's see who can do the most, but it was who is actually doing it, kind of more healthy. And it really made people think about it. And the fact that the boss had kind of set that example and put it out
Yeah.
there really kind of helped with setting the tone.
That is the key. If you can get your boss on side and maybe even speak to them before a team meeting and just say, listen, I want to raise this. What do you think about it? And you know, as the leader, could you lead on this and actually say what you do, and sort of talk about your well-being, because then that will encourage us to also focus on well-being. And I know some really good leaders who do that. They start with what they're doing for their well-being. They ask their team what they're doing for their well-being. They will say things like, if I send you an email out of hours, I do not expect a response out of hours. You know, that's because it's just me remembering what I need to ask you, rather than me expecting you. Someone's got a really good footer like that. Someone I know that says at the bottom of their email, just because I've said, not in this terminology, so she said it really nicely, but she goes, I have sent you this email because it works better with my working pattern. I'm not expecting a response back at the same time, something like that. And it was wonderful. I thought that was great. And so if you can encourage that as well, but yeah, getting the boss on side is the best way. And most bosses will be up for it. Most bosses will be up for it.
Yeah, definitely. In my experience, actually, people don't realise they're doing it and don't realise the impression that it's got if they are doing it themselves. So actually
Yeah.
talking to people about it, they'd much rather be giving the right impression and having a healthy team than
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'm just not very good at keeping an eye on the chat. Let me just have a little look. Were there any questions in there? Anybody want to throw anything in for Harpreet? You've got a valuable resource here. So do if you've got anything. I know that people have probably just got so much there that they're kind of thinking about it. And so can you just remind us, Harpreet, about how people access those resources? Because I noticed that a kind of WhatsApp message came up on my phone and it looked a bit strange. I wasn't sure about it. So
it will, yeah. So you will have had a if you completed the form, you'll have had a WhatsApp message from Harpreet. Well, not me, it was the MWA. And there's 2 buttons that you can press. You can press both. One's for the slides, one's for the how to switch off effectively freebie, I call it. So you can have both of those delivered to your phone and you can access them whenever you want to. The one thing I will say is that it's easy to get overwhelmed. I would love for you to just pick 2 things that you've taken away. In fact, I'm going to ask you to pop them in the chat. Is that all right, Jane? If you can just say the 2 things that resonated with you the most that you're going to do differently as a result of being here today, because you won't be able to do all of them, but the 2 things that you think, actually, yeah, I'm someone that needs to set a stop time, or I'm somebody that needs to be a bit kinder to myself. The reason I'm asking to you to write it is because you're more intentional about the things that you write than you are about the things that you just think. So I do this with all my group coaching when I'm coaching teams, and I'm like, let me know what your takeaways were. What are you going to do differently on Monday?
Perfect. So
being kinder to myself. Wonderful. Look, they're doing it.
Yeah, people are doing it already. That's fantastic. And we have got a hand up as well. So while you're doing that, if Daniel, if you want to come in.
Yeah, I'm happy. Sorry. I just want to thank you. I'm not asking a question. I just want to emphasize what you've done. I think you saved someone's life. I think everything you said actually did resonate with me, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I will tell you, the thing that keeps me going, it's not easy being in business, and I started in lockdown, so you can imagine how difficult it's been. I've had a number of people that I've never ever met come and hug me at a conference and say, you saved me from my bridge moment. And I'm getting emotional talking about it because that's why I do what I do. And I'm like, I want to be the person that I needed 8 years ago. And that's what drives me more than anything else. So I really, really appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
So thank you so much. Do continue to put your comments in the chat. Do act on the WhatsApp, get hold of those slides, because there's so much in there to and have a look at those freebies. Harpreet, just want to say a massive thank you. It's been an absolutely fantastic session. You are most welcome to stay and listen to our updates. I suspect you you have got lots of other things to do too, but as I say, a huge thank you. And I'm personally looking forward to getting those slides and starting to do some of those things. So
brilliant. No problem at all. Yeah, thank you everybody for having me. I am going to have to skedaddle because I need to leave the house in 15 minutes. So and I need to get some lunch. And obviously I've just been talking about not having your lunch at your desk. So I'm going to go and do that before I go. Yeah, thank you ever so much, everybody. And yeah, just look after yourselves.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. So for people staying with us, we've nearly finished our session today. We've got a few more minutes, and I think I believe it's the lovely Aoife from our One NHS Finance team is just going to give you a really quick update on all things One NHS Finance. So do stay on and listen to that if you're able. If not, don't worry, you can pick it up on the recording. But note the recording is only going to be available for a couple of weeks, so get there soon. And I'll just quickly hand over to Aoife. Take it away.
Thanks, Jane. Just a really quick update from me today. So we had 21 accreditations approved this time round. 3 of those from the East of England. We had 1 level 1 and 2 level 2, so that's really great. The Value Maker Award nominations closed on Tuesday night. 23 of those are from East of England. We had 117 nominations in total, so our panelists are currently working on judging those. There are 200 booked on to the Finance Departments of the Future session, which is taking place on Tuesday, the 15th of October. But we do have 100 spaces left. So if anyone would like to book onto that, it was a really good session last time. This is the second time we're running it. Our next Demystifying NHS Finance event is taking place on Tuesday, the 19th of November. There are 136 spaces available for that one. And of course, we have our Value Maker annual conference coming up on the 7th of November. You can book on to that in person or online. It is a really fun day of networking, so I do hope to see some of you there. We have lots and lots of health and wellbeing events coming up as well. So I'll pop the link in the chat and you can have a look through our events page and have a look through our events. Thanks, Jane. That's all from me.
That is absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Aoife. As always, loads and loads of things coming up through One NHS Finance and through the Regional Finance Academy. I really encourage people, if you haven't done it before, or if you want to go back again, to go to Value Maker Annual Conference. I went for the first time last year. It's free. You do have to get down to London, but other than that, everything's done for you. It will be an absolutely brilliant event, and I just found it one of those days that just gave me so much energy, because there was loads of nice food, but even leaving that to one side, it was great to see loads of value makers, loads of people from East of England, etc. So if you can make the time, I'd really encourage you to do that. As I say, it was one of the best days of my year last year. So thank you so much to all of our colleagues at One NHS Finance. The link is in the chat. If you want to go to any events, you just need to do what we did today, which for today's event, just literally go to the log on, reset your password if you need to, but I shouldn't say that to everyone because you're all here, so you've done it. Encourage others in your organisation to do it. Book onto the events, and it's great to know that there's some spaces left on things like the future of finance. I know that been really good feedback on that event before. In terms of Regional Finance Academy, I'm hoping that I'll get one of our newsletters out in the next few days. We just had our Rockstar Superstars conference, the HFMA branch one, earlier in the week, which was fantastic. And one of the things that we heard a lot about was the Student Support Network. So if you are studying at the moment, that stuff, look out for the details on that, because this is an absolutely brilliant group that's sort of grown up from the students, people studying within our patch, and it's a great resource that you can tap into for a bit of support, a bit of a place to have a whinge, and to find some resources to help you with your studying. So I'm going to give everybody 10 minutes back. Thank you ever so much for coming along to our Value Maker session today. Thanks as always to our wonderful regional value makers who make all of this possible, and to lovely Aoife and Georgia who've supported us in getting the event going. So enjoy your lunch and hope to see you at something soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye all.